You know how sometimes you'll be reading a story online and think, okay, this is getting ridiculous. The author is just making stuff up now. It's like the plot has gone completely off the rails into a fever dream of nonsense. Well, what if I told you that history's writer's room had days like that, too? We're talking about totally real events that sound more like drunk fanfiction than something you'd find in a textbook. These are the moments where reality just decided to clock out for the day and let chaos take the wheel. Let's get right into it. Number 6, the day Australia lost a war to birds. After World War I, the Australian government gave a bunch of land to its veterans to become farmers, which sounds lovely. The only problem was, this land was also the preferred hangout spot for about 20,000 emus. And emus, if you don't know, are basically feathered velociraptors with an insatiable hunger and zero respect for property lines. They descended upon the wheat fields like a biblical plague, and the farmers, hardened veterans of the Great War, were helpless. So they did what any reasonable person would do. They called the army. The government, in its infinite wisdom, dispatched a literal military unit, commanded by a Major Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery, armed with 2 Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. This was it, man versus beast, technology versus nature. A heavily armed military force versus a flock of oversized, flightless birds. The outcome seems pretty obvious, right? Wrong, so wrong. The first attempt was a total disaster. The emus were too far away, and a sudden rainstorm made a bigger mess than the birds did. The second attempt was even more humiliating. The military tried to ambush a group of about 1,000 emus. But the birds, apparently having graduated from the Sun Tzu School of Warfare, immediately split into tiny groups and ran in every direction. Major Meredith could only lament. If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks. After firing nearly 1,000 rounds and only killing about a dozen birds, the soldiers mounted a gun on a truck for a mobile assault. This plan failed when the emu they were chasing ran faster than the truck could handle the bumpy terrain, causing the gunner to fall flat on his face while the truck crashed through a fence. After a week of utter failure and public ridicule, the military withdrew in shame. The emus had won. The press had a field day, calling it the Great Emu War, a name that has stuck ever since as a permanent reminder that sometimes the universe has a very, very weird sense of humor. Number 5, the absolute dumpster fire of the 1904 Olympic Marathon. If you think running 2 miles sounds tough, try doing it in 90-degree heat on dusty country roads with only one water station, all while being actively discouraged by the race organizers who wanted to study the effects of purposeful dehydration. Welcome to the 1904 St. Louis Olympics, an event so catastrophically mismanaged it feels like it was planned by a committee of cartoon villains. Let's just run through the highlight reel of this human disaster. The man who finished first, Fred Lors, was a fraud. He got a cramp 9 miles in, hitched a ride in his manager's car for the next 11 miles, and then jogged the last few miles to the finish line to be hailed as the winner. He was about to be awarded the gold medal by Alice Roosevelt herself before someone in the crowd called him out. His defense? He claimed it was just a joke. The actual winner, Thomas Hicks, was having a much worse time. His support team, instead of giving him water, decided to give him a performance-enhancing cocktail of strychnine, yes, literal rat poison, mixed with raw egg whites and brandy. He was hallucinating, stumbling, and had to be physically carried across the finish line by his trainers while his legs moved in a running motion in midair. He won, but immediately lost consciousness and probably a few years off his life. And it gets weirder. Another runner, a Cuban postman named Anderin Carvajal, had lost all his money in New Orleans and had to hitchhike to the race. He ran in his street clothes and work boots. He hadn't eaten in 40 hours, so during the race, he stopped in an orchard to eat some apples, which turned out to be rotten, causing him to get sick and take a nap on the side of the road. Another competitor was chased a mile off course by aggressive dogs. Out of 32 runners who started, only 14 finished. This wasn't a marathon. It was a bizarre, heat-stroked passion play about human suffering. Number 4, the bear who was a corporal. Look, every great story needs an unlikely hero. A farm boy who becomes a space wizard, a shy kid who gets bitten by a radioactive spider, or, in the case of the Polish army during World War II, a 500-pound Syrian brown bear who was an officially enlisted soldier. This is the story of WatchTech, and it's so absurdly wholesome it feels like a Disney movie pitch that got rejected for being too unrealistic. In 1942, Polish soldiers, exiled from their home and fighting alongside the Allies, were passing through Iran when they came across a young boy who had found an orphaned bear cub. The soldiers bought the cub, named him WatchTech, and basically adopted him as the company's son. They fed him condensed milk from an old vodka bottle, and as he grew, his diet expanded to include honey, marmalade, and his two absolute favorites: beer, which he would drink straight from the bottle, and cigarettes, which he would eat. He was the perfect soldier. WatchTech became the ultimate morale officer. He would wrestle with the men, usually winning, and even learn to salute when greeted. But his status as a beloved, beer-guzzling bear son hit a bureaucratic wall when the unit needed to board a British transport ship to fight in Italy. The regulations strictly forbade pets or mascot animals on board. Did the Polish soldiers leave him behind? Of course not. They did the only logical thing: they officially enlisted him into the army. Private WatchTech was given a paybook, a serial number, and the rank of private. He was now, on paper, a legitimate soldier, and he earned his keep. During the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino, WatchTech saw his human comrades struggling to carry heavy crates of artillery shells. So, he just walked over, stood on his hind legs, held out his paws, and started carrying the 100-pound crates himself, stacking them neatly where they needed to go without ever dropping one. He became so famous for this that the 22nd Artillery Supply Company changed their official emblem to a picture of a bear carrying a giant bullet. After the war, he was honorably discharged with the rank of corporal and lived out his retirement at the Edinburgh Zoo, a celebrated war hero. He's probably the only character in history who could be described as both a decorated war veteran and a very good boy. Number 3, a war fought over a bucket. Number 3, a war fought over a bucket. Humans have fought wars for land, for power, for ideology, for love. We are a species driven by grand, sweeping motivations. Except for that one time in 1325 when 2 Italian city-states engaged in a full-scale war, resulting in thousands of deaths, all because someone stole a wooden bucket. This isn't an exaggeration. This is the War of the Oaken Bucket, and it's a testament to the fact that human pettiness knows no bounds. Our story takes place in northern Italy, where the rival city-states of Modena and Bologna absolutely hated each other. Think of it like the most intense sports rivalry you can imagine, but instead of booing, they occasionally sacked each other's cities. One day, a small group of soldiers from Modena snuck into the city of Bologna and, as a grand act of military trolling, stole a simple wooden bucket from the main city well and ran back home with it. Now, a normal, well-adjusted city might have responded by sending a strongly worded letter or maybe stealing Modena's prize-winning garden gnome. Bologna was not a normal, well-adjusted city. They were furious. They demanded the immediate return of their bucket. Modena, enjoying the chaos they'd created, basically said, "No, it's our bucket now. Cry about it." So, Bologna gathered an army of over 30,000 men and marched on Modena to get their bucket back by force. What followed was the Battle of Zappolino, one of the bloodiest battles of the European Middle Ages. Despite being outnumbered more than 4-1, the Modenese army somehow won, chasing the Bolognese forces back to their city while taunting them relentlessly. All told, about 2,000 people lost their lives that day. For a bucket, a simple, splintery oak bucket, and the punchline to this century-spanning joke, Modena never gave the bucket back. A replica of it is still proudly displayed in Modena's City Hall to this day, an eternal middle finger to their neighbors, and a glorious monument to the fact that sometimes, the dumbest reasons cause the biggest problems. Number 2, the Tanganyika laughter epidemic. We've all had those moments where you get the giggles at a bad time, in a quiet classroom, during a serious meeting. You know the drill. It's awkward for a minute, then it passes. Now imagine that same feeling, but it doesn't pass. It spreads to your friends, then to your entire town, and it lasts for over a year. In 1962, in what is now Tanzania, this exact scenario played out. It started with 3 girls at a boarding school who started laughing and simply couldn't stop. This wasn't just a case of a good joke landing well. This was uncontrollable, debilitating laughter. It was accompanied by crying, fainting, and random screaming. Within days, 95 of the school's 159 students were affected, forcing the school to shut down. But sending the students home was the worst possible move. It was like sending infected characters out of a zombie movie's quarantine zone. The laughing plague spread to the students' home villages. One village, Nshamba, saw over 200 of its residents fall victim to these unstoppable fits of laughter. In total, the epidemic spread to over a dozen different schools and communities, affecting more than 1,000 people and forcing 14 schools to close. The whole bizarre phenomenon lasted for an agonizing 18 months. Scientists who studied it called it a classic case of mass psychogenic illness, or mass hysteria. Basically, in a high-stress environment, like a strict boarding school, one person's physical reaction to stress can be subconsciously mirrored by others, creating a domino effect of shared symptoms without any actual underlying disease. Your brain sees someone else freaking out, and its main takeaway is, "Oh, are we freaking out now? I can do that too." It's a social contagion, a neurological trend that turned a huge swath of the country into the audience of a Joker stand-up special against their will. Number 1, the man who fought a war with a sword and a longbow. You know that one person in every online shooter game who ignores all the high-tech weaponry and insists on running around with a melee weapon just for the sheer chaotic energy of it all. Well, that guy was a real person. His name was Mad Jack Churchill, and he fought in World War II. His personal motto, which he lived by, was, "Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed." This wasn't just a quirky fashion choice. He used his archaic arsenal. In 1940, during a battle in France, he signaled an ambush on a German patrol by standing up and shooting the enemy sergeant with a longbow. He is the only British soldier with a confirmed longbow kill in the entire war. A year later, he led a commando raid in Norway, and as the landing craft doors dropped, he was the first one out, playing a rousing tune on his bagpipes before hurling a grenade and charging into battle. The sheer psychological damage of seeing a Scottish madman playing bagpipes while running at you with a sword cannot be overstated. His most legendary feat came in Sicily, where he and a single corporal managed to capture 42 German soldiers and an entire mortar crew using only his broadsword. He just crept through the darkness, appearing like some kind of medieval phantom. The German soldiers were so baffled and terrified by the sight of this mustachioed man brandishing a claymore in the middle of a 20th century firefight that they just gave up. He was eventually captured, of course, but true to form, he immediately escaped from a concentration camp, was recaptured, and then escaped again from another one. He simply walked out when the lights failed, strolled 150 miles across Austria eating stolen vegetables, and eventually found the American army. When the war finally ended with the bombing of Japan, Mad Jack was reportedly furious, complaining to his fellow soldiers, "If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years. He wasn't a soldier. He was a Dungeons and Dragons character who took a wrong turn at reality and was profoundly disappointed by the lack of dragons. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.